Say, am I on? I guess I'll do a little update here. I talked somewhat. These are the rollouts. This is, I repost, or I put I forget what I paid, $20 for couch cover. My dog is demonic. But I'll do a little. So I came home to do some writing on Ephesians because I got behind on that. But I figure it's an example of stuff. Today I got to see some of my friends up at Timmins, which is a mission. Just came to my mind, actually, this part. The cops had come in, which sometimes they come in, they looking or have a warrant for people, and of course they were fine, but they were looking for somebody, and they had said openly that somebody had carjacked a vehicle here in this area, and there was a child or a minor in it, but they had already recovered the car and the child. I'm sure the child's fine, but they were looking, for that person. I'm not sure who it was that they were looking for, but whoever it was that did that. And, they, as of now, from what I understood, unless they caught him by now, and I noticed there was a couple of cars, and, it's a serious crime. One of the officers, was talking to some of the guys and said, this is something that's, big. Correct, I would agree. And then I thought of there was a friend up there. Sometimes I don't get along with him, but I've helped him a lot over the years. And it was interesting because I'll do my best. He'll know when I'm mad. Because he'll avoid me when he sees that I'm mad. But either way, it was interesting because I heard, and then he kind of told me, that some people are letting him stay at their house. Now, I had heard this a few weeks back, and then he was telling me the other day, he kind of says he pays rent, but he doesn't pay rent. They let him stay. But then he had a lot of complaints about them. He was bringing it up, and then today he was speaking to one of my other friends, and I'm assuming that these people basically told him, you've lived here for free for so many months, and you're going to have to move. And so he told one of the other friends, he said, I can report them for all types of, call the city, call the cops, whatever. I could start a whole process of reporting them to authorities about all types of drug use or whatever it is. And the friend he told that to also let him stay once on his property for a period of time, parking a vehicle on his property. This was about 8 years or 10 years ago. And over time, that friend, the one he's talking to today, that friend told him, you got to move your vehicle off my property. It's been here too long. And he made a call to Child Protective Services and reported the person who lived there had a child by the name of Edward. And he began a process, the same friend began a process to have her child taken away, which her child was taken away, because he did that out of spite. And now he's talking to the same person he did that to, saying, well, these people are making me move out and I'm going to begin. Now, of course, that's destructive. It's like the example of what I just showed you about the dog. I come home daily and it's destructive. But then I thought, whether it's this carjacking thing that came up today, and I thought, and this other person, he's still on his path. He's maybe 65. He's like a child. And now, because people let him stay at their house and they're going to make him move, he's now going to do all the anonymous complaints, to call anonymously whoever it is. But he's been doing this for years. This particular friend almost murdered one of my other friends about 3 years ago. And of course, society, this is not to blame any particular agency or whatever. I think, and how long does you know, you see whether it's an abuse or whether it's a I'll do a few just news updates. This is the new phone I'm still getting used to, and I hope to go short. In the local news, they did yesterday, I guess I have the paper right here, I don't have to read it again. They had the local Nueces County commissioners, and the lady who's in charge of like the elections here, what is her name, Kara Sands, her sister was tragically killed maybe less than a year ago on the highway going out to the ranch where I used to do those videos. And I remember one day I went out, there was a huge traffic wreck, and the cops, had blocked off the road. This is when it happened. And I believe it was that day her sister was killed. Now this is the local lady that's in charge of the elections, okay? And she had went to the Nueces County Commissioner about extreme voter fraud in just one little town that I'm familiar with. This town is called Robstown. And if I were to estimate, just from reading some of the stories, you might have had, over these past 15 years, you might have had thousands and thousands of false voter fraud. Maybe 50,000 overs. Because what they presented to our county judge and all, they basically said they've had so many complaints of citizens just in that one little city of Robstown, which the population is not high. It's probably maybe under 20,000 or maybe around 20,000 people. But there were many reports where during election time, people would go by different houses. They described it as sort of it's like a program over there. And they'd get a lot of the elderly citizens, they would tell them, just sign your name on the ballot and we'll fill it out for you. And then they collect hundreds of them. There was a former police officer who testified, this is all this last few days. He said, oh yes, when he was running for a particular position, somebody openly came up to him, this like a cottage industry, and said to him, I have 250 ballots right now with your name on them, or I can get your name on them. 250, and he was going to sell them to this former police officer who was running for a position in Robstown. And he said the price might have been, I don't know, $1,000, and you'll get these 250. So what they do, what some people do in that little town here, within our county, Nueces County, I believe it's in Nueces County, they basically go door to door and tell people, we're gonna, just sign your name on a ballot. These are mail-in ballots. So after all of this, just the last few days I'm looking at it, the Caller Times had to report on it. But they reported on it maybe a few days after most of the national media had a huge criticism against Trump about voter fraud, meaning United States wide. And because Trump was going to investigate various states, we want to do a thing on voter fraud, it became in the local media as well as the national media, it became like they even had opinions that it does not exist. Voter fraud simply does not exist. And if Trump thinks he's going to crack down, and then they disbanded Trump's agency where they were going to look into voter fraud. Look, there was some studies done. There's voter fraud that takes place. But the Caller Times, as well as other national media, they mocked it. They made fun of it. And they just ran that opinion piece. It doesn't exist. But then they had to run this local one because the local people, Democrats as well as Republicans, Hispanics as well as Anglos, all said it's rampant in that one town. Do you know there are national media outlets today that would deny that there is more than even 250 possible voter frauds in the whole U.S. election since the beginning of U.S. elections. I remember hearing stories, watching the news this last year and a half, that said we have found like six ever that was possible voter fraud because they were pushing back. You had enough just in one election, in one little city, that was more than what some national media was saying. Why do they lie like that? Because it's a game, and it's a constant game. And I just found it like amazing that the Colder Times basically had to print about the rampant voter fraud because you had cops said, look, they came up to me with 250 ballots. You had elderly citizens in Robstown complaining they're knocking on our doors and that's open. Okay, so it's a problem, it's wrong, and the media net has not helped with that because many of the states that Trump was going in and saying, we're going to find out, we're going to investigate, you probably would have had millions. Okay? You probably would have had at least in the million possible voter fraud in some way, some shape or form. And there was one study done and they mocked it. They said there was like 2 or 3 in the whole nation, possibly, or it's just a game that they play. I gave that example listening to that one friend tell the other friend, these people are going to make me move out and I'm going to report them anonymously for all. And he actually did that to the same person he was speaking to, who caused the woman to lose her son. And they were both there today. And I think, okay, people, I understand people have wickedness, malice, all these types of things. And why would it continue for so long? Why would the serial killers, whether it's a Bundy or whatever, why would they continue? It doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. So, this will just be a brief thing. Those that are new to my little videos, this is like an update right now. The issue with this one particular dog, and it's interesting because that's multiple times. That mess you see that I showed you in the beginning, and then you come home and you're like, changes. It's time for many, many changes in life. And, okay, let's see how this goes. God bless everybody.